9.5, subtracting integers. So integers, again, numbers without decimals. We're going to be looking at doing subtraction problems. It's kind of related a lot to what we did in 9.4. We're adding and subtracting things with negatives. So first of all, I want to be able to kind of switch back and forth between subtracting a number and looking at it as though we're adding a negative. And that's this first line of our notes here, that it says subtraction can be seen as adding a negative. So adding a negative. Some people prefer to look at it this way, that if they have 5 minus 2, you could say, oh, that's the same as 5 plus a negative 2. And then that's going back to what we did in section 4. You have 5 positives, you have 2 negatives. Those 2 negatives are going to cancel with 2 of the positives, leaving you just 3 positives. So for you, if that's easier, you could look at it that way. Personally, I don't really like doing it that way. I prefer to look at it as one math operation instead of 2 like we have right here. So I usually kind of do it the other direction. That for me, if I'm given something like plus a negative 2 or minus a negative, I like making it one sign in between there. And so when you're given 2 math operations, simplify it by making it one sign. And that's how I'm going to go through and do most of my examples. Speaking of which, here we go. 5 minus a negative 6. So whenever we have this double negative here, that turns into a positive. I kind of like viewing it this way. Maybe like that minus sign I'll do in blue, this one in red. I kind of always pictured that you could take those signs and take that red one. If you would rotate it 90 degrees and put it right on top of the blue, it takes those two combined together to give you a plus. So 5 minus a negative 6 just turns into 5 plus 6, which is 11. So go up to that line up above it. Subtracting a negative is the same as addition. So if we were looking at this kind of like on a number line, that means you'd have to go right on a number line. So we'll look at this a little bit later down below, but it's kind of like we have this 5, we're adding 6 to it, means we go 6 to the right. And that would have us end up at the 11. If I were to do the same thing here with 5 minus a negative 6, then, all right, minus a negative, that just turns into a positive. So that becomes negative 5 plus 6, minus a negative again is addition. So now if I have this negative 5 on my number line, I need to go 6 to the right. Well, 5 of those is going to take me to 0, because I'm starting out at negative 5. So I have to go one more and get to a 1. So that's going to be one way to look at it. The other way, like we were doing in the notes yesterday, is to say, all right, I have 5 negatives and I have 6 positives. Well, I have more positives, which then means my answer has to be positive. And the 5 negatives are going to cancel with 5 of the positives, which then how many positives are left? Just 1. So one more positive than negative. All right, I might have lost you a little bit there, but we're going to go through and do some examples, and that will round out the notes for today. So like in 9.4, there's those 2 different ways that I just did that last example. I'm going to take, and in here we'll do these 4 examples, kind of using the number line, this number line here. Then we'll take these 4 examples, doing it kind of that second way with how many positives, how many negatives, where does that end up for us. All right, we'll do the number line ones all together at one time. So if I have this 109 plus 2, well, some of these aren't going to fit on my number line, but we could look at it as though 109 is going to be over here somewhere, 109. And if we ever add 2 to it, that means addition means we go 2 to the right. So you can kind of picture you'd have 110 and then 111. So the answer to this one then would be 111. So equals 111. Next we have 50 minus a negative 10. And I like looking at that like one sign, so I have 50, and then my minus a negative turns into addition, and I have my 10. So we're really doing 50 plus 10. So kind of like our last one, we're over here at 50, we're adding 10, and you probably don't even need the number line. You've been doing this for years and years and years. We're going to end up 10 bigger than 50, so our answer ends up being 60. All right. Negative 5 minus 7. Here's going to be where this number line is going to start coming in more handy because we have negatives. And when you have positives and positives, it's good. Positives and negatives, things start getting a little bit more dicey. So I'm going to start at a negative 5. So I'm starting right here on my number line. And I'm adding 7. So when we add 7, that means we're going to go 7 to the right. As addition, we go that way. Well, if I look, it's going to take me 5 jumps to get right here. So I could say I have 5 to get right there. So I need to go 2 past that. So 5 gets me just to 0. I go 2 more, so I end up at a positive 2. So negative 5 plus 7 equals 2. And some of you may really love this number line way of looking at it, and then you'll just do them this way. Looks like I can't erase that, so we'll switch colors. Negative 8 minus a negative 3, so just like a couple examples ago, minus a negative just turns into addition. So we have a negative 8 plus 3, so if we're starting on our number line down here at negative 8, and we're going 3, adding 3, so that means it's going to be 3 to the right, so we have 1 jump to there, 2, and 3, so we end up at negative 5. So that might be how some of you like doing them. If so, knock yourselves out. Another way that a lot of you may find you like more would be this here. We'll go and do this on the right-hand side. So if we look at 50 minus 80, so if no signs written in there at the beginning, it's a positive 50. We have a negative 80. All right, so we have more negatives. So our answer has to be negatives. Well, those 50 positives are going to cancel with 50 of the negatives. So 50 of those cancel with 50 of these. That means 30 will be left, because 80 minus 50 gives us 30. So the answer then would be negative 30. There's 30 negatives left. All right, the next one here, we have our negative 15 minus a negative 2 turns into a plus 2. And from there we have, all right, so we have 15 negatives, 2 positives, so we have more negatives. My answer is going to be negative. And then I have 15 negatives, 2 positives. All right, 2 positives are going to cancel with 2 of the negatives. So I have 2 less here. 15 minus 2 is 13, so I have 13 negatives left, negative 13. Next one, we're looking at this right here. We have 20 plus a negative 30. Well, you could, I suppose, write it just the way it is, but I'm going to look at it as though we have 20 positives. Plus a negative 30 just becomes minus 30. So I have 20 positives, 30 negatives. So I have more negatives than I do positives. And my 20 positives are going to cancel out 20 of the negatives. 30 take away 20 gives me 10. So I'm left with 10 negatives. So negative 10 for that right there. And now our very last one. So we have negative 2 minus a negative. Well, minus a negative becomes addition. So we have negative 2 plus 8. All right, I have 2 negatives. I have 8 positives. That gives me more positives than negatives. So my answer then has to be positive. And I could put a little plus sign there, but technically it's not simplified, so we should just leave it as a number without a negative for a positive. All right, my 2 negatives right here are going to cancel with 2 of my positives. So 8 gets 2 smaller. 8 minus 2 is 6, so I'm left with positive 6. And again, don't put the little plus sign right here, because then you'll get marked down, so it's not simplified. So learning targets, we're adding, subtracting numbers in our head without a calculator. So you can do it either one of those 2 ways. Find which works best for you. Let me know if I can help you in class. Have a good one.